What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde, and boy, do we have a special guest. My man, Garrett Gunderson is in the house. What's up, Garrett?
What's up, Darius? Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, dude, I'm so pumped to have you on the show. I've been like, I gotta have Garrett on the show. And I always see you doing stuff with my buddy Justin Donald. I'm like, I gotta have Garrett on the show. And then finally I saw your new book came out. And I'm like, I'm gonna ask Garrett if he wants to be on the show. So man, here we are.
It's a hell yes. It was a hell yes. I definitely want to do this. So
it's either hell no or hell yes, and it's a hell yes here. Do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and we'll get started?
Let's do it.
All right. So for listeners who are new to the show, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. People are living their passions and those creating greatness in the world and doing so despite the odds. My man Garrett here is neither short of passion or greatness. So I have a little backstory for the audience. As you guys all know, I talk about GOT and MIT a lot, and that's where I met Garrett. He was having a conversation with a past guest and mutual friend, Kat Hoke. And you guys were like exchanging, like, oh, do you know this person? I'm like, oh, those guys seem cool. And I overheard you talking about like Huntsville or Ogden Valley and Utah. And we had a little bit of a conversation about that area. I used to own a home there. And I was like, man, that's a cool guy. And, it was real brief. It was real quick. I mean, we were kind of there for a couple of days together. And then you did a presentation. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he's a guy who was a Mormon guy who had a family, a bunch of entrepreneurs. What was his name again?
Christensen. Yeah, Rich Christensen.
Yeah, it's Rich Christensen. So you guys did this really cool presentation to our group, and I was like, man, that guy's got a really cool story. I'm not going to spoil it for the audience because they'll listen to it on the show right now. But you and Rich did this really cool presentation around like building entrepreneurs as children, and you start talking about your work around family banks and how to think about that. And I got your book, which you're one of your books, because you've written many books, What Would the Rockefellers Do, which I started reading, and I was like, this is a really interesting way to think about families and wealth. And anyway, I left off that entire experience thinking, man, Garrett's an interesting guy and doing interesting things. Now, this is where I was like, that guy's living the freaking dream. About, I don't know, 2-3 years later, this is like 2018 or something like that, my buddy John Rulin, also a former guest on the show, starts promoting that you're out there doing a stand-up comedy thing.
Yeah.
All around the United States, which ends up, it gets like picked up as was it like Comedy Central or something like that, or Netflix? I mean, it was like
a company called Multicom that's a distributor. Just signed a contract with them, and then they work with the streaming services. And what they do is they rent it for time periods to the different streaming services. So we'll find which ones end up taking it and seeing it out there in 2024. But dude, it was the ride of a lifetime doing that. It was insane. Like, insecurities that I had to face, but so much fun and turned out so damn good. And for how short of a time it took for it to come out, like that, I'm excited to share. Like, I have a formula that allowed me to do it.
I want to learn all about that because you don't know this about me, but I mean, I'm a huge comedy like fan. B, I've always had a secret desire to do literally what you did. And then I guess C, I'm like, man, I can't do that because I have so much raunchy shit I want to talk about, but then it's going to be out there publicly. So I want to dive into that. But before we go there, if you don't mind, I would love to do your formal bio, and then we love origin stories here at the Greatness Machine. I know some of your origin stories, which you have a really cool origin story, like considering like kind of the world you came up in and what you're doing now. But if you don't mind, I would love to do a quick bio, and then we'll jump in your origin story. Does that work for you, man?
Sounds great.
All right. So you guys, Garrett is a serial entrepreneur. He built and exited an Inc. 5000 financial services business, author of 9 books, including what we just mentioned, What Would the Rockefellers Do, Killing Sacred Cows. We're going to be talking about his new book, Money Unmasked, as well as he has a children's book that we'll be talking about that's coming out. And dude, Comedy Special, The American Ream, produced by Emmy winner Martin Callner. I mean, dude, I meant when I said it, like there's a lot of people out there that, you kind of get like, I guess maybe pigeonholed. It's like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a wealth guy. I'm an author. And then, you know, like sometimes people will do like, yeah, I'm a thought leader. So they'll write the book and it's about their business. It helps drive some lead gen. But like, you want to throw a curveball, then it's like, I'll go do a stand-up comedy tour. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, this is a man of my own heart, like someone that's out there just like living his true self. But I'm assuming you didn't just like wake up one day when you're 5 years old saying, I'm going to go do all this stuff. You know, give us a little bit of the origin story, Garrett, if you don't mind.
Well, and I'm going to tie in some comedy to the origin story because people are like, hey, like, what made you want to do comedy? Well, dude, I live in Utah. So it's funny because someone told me to Google my stuff yesterday and because they were changing some work with SEO. And it still says Garrett Gunderson LDS. Like, people want to know, am I Mormon? Because I live in Utah. And ironically, like, half of my family is Mormon, like my dad's side. And Mormon royalty. My great, great, great grandfather was president of the Mormon church, right?
Whoa.
So that's kind of crazy. The other side of my family, I have this great grandfather that came over from Italy, hardcore Catholic, like 7 day a week, go pray every morning, run the bingo, you know, like volunteer for everything, like just like couldn't be different from a religious standpoint other than they were both really religious. But the one thing that like transcended religion for my family was comedy. Because like I could be a little kid and repeat my uncle's jokes and not really get in trouble, even though normally that would be like, no, you could never say that, right? And even my grandma, my grandma died just this year, 91 years old. But the last time I saw her, it was the same thing every time. Are you going to tell me your jokes? And dude, my Mormon grandma wanted me to tell the dirtiest, most inappropriate stuff. I wouldn't even say that shit from stage, Darius. And like some of the family would be like, okay, here goes Garrett with these jokes again. Cause like I would show up to the family party and she'd just be like, are you going to tell your jokes now? And she wanted the same inappropriate stuff, ending in the word twat, you know, just the worst. Yeah, you name it. And like, so comedy always felt like love because the uncles on the Mormon side were hilarious and dirty. And the uncles on the Catholic side, hilarious and dirty. But like, I still felt a little bit stifled growing up. Like I shouldn't, you know, like I should be a good boy and I wanted to earn their respect and their love. And so even when I started doing comedy, I was nervous to just be fully expressed. And I'll talk a little more origin here in a minute. But when I finished my first comedy special, The American Ream, I did it kind of backwards. I did the comedy special and then I toured with that special. And it was the final like 2 nights that I was headlining here locally. I was ending the tour here locally. It was the second part of the tour that I'd done here in Utah. And so it's a Friday night. I'm headlining and I'm doing my American Ream comedy set. And I just got like bored for the first time in comedy. Like I was on the stage. I wasn't killing it because I was not like, here's a rule. If you're in your head and not with the crowd, it's never funny. Like you got to just say everything on your mind and invite them in. Otherwise there's a disconnect. So like, it just was an okay set. You know, like I had some people laughing, but as I look, I was like, it wasn't my best. So the next night I'm like, I'm not going to do any of my normal jokes. I'm just going to get there and talk about how I grew up. I'm going to talk about my life and I'm just going to talk about real stories I think are funny. And it was scary as hell, dude. Like, cause I didn't have a set, right? Like I'm just going up there and I invited friends and family. My parents were there. They brought some friends. My wife was in the front row, you know, and there was a woman that went both nights. And she said the first night, she goes, it was good. She goes, the second night though, I felt like I was in your family room and you're just like sharing these stories. And it wasn't like the most laughs per minute I had, but people were with me the whole time. And I did some crowd work and it was like so healing because my dad, who used to be Mormon, I'm just making fun of Mormonism and he's laughing, right? And I'm like, oh, this is fun. And it just kind of like helped me heal from some of that kind of like feeling stifled, feeling censored. But yeah, like comedy feels like family to me. It feels like love. It feels like the best times, the family parties. We always look forward to it, dude. Every year around Christmas, we do the family roast. You get to draw someone's name in our family and then you get to roast them. And the thing is, like a lot of the time people do videos, they'll do like a Hoarders episode or like, I'll just do a straight normal roast where I get up and I just like joke about the person, you know, and dude, we're laughing hysterically and nobody's left yet. Nobody's been overly upset, but you know, it's going to be a good year. They're like, I hope you don't get offended. I'm like, oh damn, what are we about to go through and hear, you know?
That's amazing. I love the family roast. I'm going to my wife's family. They have a place in Napa, and we're doing this big thing in Napa this year with like whole family, and they're trying to do all this. Like, let's do karaoke night. I think I'm gonna do the family roast. Could you have to do you have to give them a heads up so they can prepare?
So what we did was we drew names, and sometimes when we say draw names, sometimes I'm like, oh, dude, I want my sister because I know the perfect thing, right? So you kind of cheat the name in. And
Yeah.
my little sister is super funny, so she always does videos. She did like a day in the life of Garrett once, and it was just hysterical. It was her husband getting up in the morning to work out, but he's just doing the dumbest stuff, and they're quoting my books, but making it dumb quotes like the keys to success is having all the keys. Garrett Gunderson, just making fun of like once my wife said the dumbest thing. We were on like the married game on a cruise, right? And they're like, what does Garrett do to put you in the mood? She's like, well, we start playing cribbage, which is the oldest man card game in the world. So my sister's showing a picture, like a video of me playing cribbage with my wife, her getting turned on. It's just so much just make fun of each other the entire time. And the one year we didn't do it, I just roasted the whole family. I just went up with a traditional roast, and I roasted everybody a little bit in the whole family. And this will even get my kids to like forget about their friends. They want to come hang out here. And we've even included them in the roast now. And so, yeah, I mean, I know that this is supposed to be origin story, and here I am talking about comedy, but it's like, this is the thing is I just love having a good time. I love being playful. Yeah. And like comedy is that thing that reminds me to be playful and enjoy life along the way. And when we're laughing, we're present. We're in the moment. We're not worried about the past or concerned about the future. We're just with someone in this like spontaneous reaction. It's fascinating. And when I would go on stage sometimes, like, it's me and a mic in a crowd. How insane is this? This is awesome. I just get to go out there and I get to say things. And when they react, I get to feel that each moment, right? And it's just like this. It's a really cool connection. It's a really special thing. And I was scared as hell to do it the first time I got up on stage, man. Like scared.
I'm done. So I'm going to go out of order. So let's talk about comedy some more because I'm telling you, man. You got me. I'm telling you, this is like I've been wanting to go on stage and do this I'm 45 years old for I don't know 30 years, and I just haven't done it.
Put 7 people on a comedy stage for the first time they've ever been on, so you're talking to the right person. I put people on a comedy stage that had never been, and you know what? Most of them did great. Most of them did really good.
So did you get a coach to do this for the first time? Did you hire a coach? Did you just write your own thing? Like, tell us about the first experience, because that's where I'm telling you, I'm like a guy that dives in headfirst on everything. And I'm like, I keep stopping myself from doing it.
Well, if you want like the first time that I did comedy, I'll go there, and then I'll give when I decided to do it. So we're at a black tie formal financial event at a Four Seasons, and there's a jazz band playing, and I'm drinking tequila. And I'd been telling jokes just in the small group, and they were at my table. I'm like, dude, they're like, that was funny. You should get up when the band's done and just go tell some jokes in the room. So the band completes at a formal financial function, and I'm drunk enough that I go up there and get on the microphone. My wife is immediately embarrassed and leaves the room. Just leaves and like hopes that it's going to end soon because I'm embarrassing her. And it's like, I'm definitely tone deaf because I'm too drunk. I'm telling jokes that are like a little racy, not the best. Like, it's just half the crowd is like totally flabbergasted and offended, and half of them are laughing hysterically because they just can't believe that I'm up there doing it. Like, I remember this one woman after me, like, I wonder what you were like as a kid. That's just fascinating that you just, and I mean, it's just like not appropriate at all. And so my wife was like, hey, like every time I'm like, I think I should do comedy. She's like, I don't think you're as funny as you think you are. I'm like, babe, when I'm speaking, people laugh all the time. She's like, you're making them money. They're being nice, right? So
no. She
made this mistake. We're at a baseball game, and I'm telling jokes because this is a slow game. And she's like, that's hilarious. Where'd you hear that? I'm like, from my own brain. So when she said, I think she didn't say hilarious. I think she said kind of funny. And I heard it as hilarious or maybe comedic God. And so then my buddy Keith introduces me that week when I'm speaking at his event as hilarious. And I'm like, dude, I'm giving a 40-minute financial talk. So I just get up on stage and I tell some jokes and they laugh. And so I immediately call this guy his name's Marcus. He was the runner-up on Last Comic Standing. I say, dude, can you come to my office tomorrow at 5? He's like, sure, why? I'm like, I have a set. I look like Jesus, but I don't have his powers. I think I can write a whole set on that. And he's like, all right. So we sat there, and my youngest son was sitting there laughing hysterically the whole time. Spent 2 hours, and he's the local comedian that's always headlining. So he's like, all right, man, let's go do this Wednesday. I'll get you up on stage. So I just invited 6 rows of friends, so I couldn't back out. And I got up there. And by the way, the night before, I'm testing the jokes on my wife, and she's like, I don't think those are ready. I think you might want to go back and work on those. So I did. I worked, I rehearsed, I talked to Marcus, I called some of my other buddies. Like I believe as a comedian, I try to bomb off stage as much as possible so that when I'm off stage, I'm performing and it's good. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but I feel like some comedians, they just try their material for the first time on a comedy stage. I'm more like, I created a comedy room in my basement, and I would just invite people over and test stuff out that way. You know?
Really? Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's crazy, man. And so, do you feel like when you write jokes, is it like, for me, I feel like a big part of the thing, I've been doing this, by the way, I've been writing jokes in my phone for like 3 years now. And I have like 30 of them, right? And they're not jokes, they're more, maybe they're jokes, they're observations, right? A lot of mine's around like hypocrisies I see in the world and like how I think they're funny, right? So I just, everyone has their own like style and perspective. I think comedians are, not all, but many are some of the smartest people on earth, because they're just seeing, they're pointing out these things that are so obvious that are like absurd, And so for me, that's where a lot of my stuff comes from. That and a lot of the feedback you're saying I get too. Like my wife does not think I'm funny at all, but like I'm like what's funny is I'd love to hear this about you, but I'm gonna talk about me for a second. Is I was always like, man, my superpower is getting people to laugh. Like I can get people. And I grew up similar to yourself in a family where like I would see my dad was really funny. He's Persian though, right? And his English wasn't very good, so his American humor wasn't that great. But I'd watch him and his buddies like drinking whiskey and him having them on the floor crying, like laughing, like they're laughing so hard they're crying. I remember this is like some of my best memories. My dad passed away when I was 22. My best memories of my dad is him and his friends laughing and him making people laugh till they cried. Yeah. And I just think that's part of our family. Like yourself, we have a lot of like, we're funny and dark humor and we say funny shit and we rip on each other. And so I say all that because when I met my wife, I was like, or when I would date girls, I'm like, this is my superpower. This is how I get laid, is I get girls to laugh and then like they want to like interact with me. And my wife was the first woman I ever met that didn't think I was fucking funny. And just
make you laugh before this is over.
I can count, Garrett, I can count on one hand how many times I've made my wife laugh. It's like she looks at me sideways like, are you fucking serious, guy? Like, did you seriously say that? And I'm like, yeah, I did. So does your wife think you're funny? Because my wife does not think I'm funny.
Actually, she does, even though like she was scared of me going up on stage because of that experience at the Four Seasons. But when I said I did like the one night on my final headline of the first tour, and then the next night I just did new material. Well, she was in the front row with her friend, who she says is the funniest person on the planet. And I'm like, that's such hurtful shit. And they were laughing at each other while I was on stage. And I was like, you're doing this shit. This is like you're cheating in front of me. Like, and we just had this cool interaction. But in the comedy special, I'll send it to you. Like, there's a moment that I just tell this story that I've never told on stage about the first, I took Viagra once in Paris and I was talking about it. And it was about my wife, and she's in the front row, and I go, and she's right here, and she's laughing hysterically. So we have it on camera, how hard she's laughing, which was great. And, because I just that night, it was the second show, I start telling these stories about how my wife was like naive when I met her. She's like going on spring break, and I'm like, cool, well, here's some money. She's like, I don't need any money. I'm like, why not? She's like, well, like guys are super nice. They'll give you drinks for free. I'm like, for free? Like, I'm like, you're scaring the hell out of me for free. That's not how that works, Yeah. So I'm just like telling these stories because I felt like the first show was good and in the bag. And we ended up using a lot of these stories in the second show because it was just like really loose and in the moment, which gave me enough confidence that when I went that second day of the final part of the first tour, I was like just telling these stories about I met my wife and, like how that happened. And then the day I knew I was in love with her, I went in to visit her at a Kmart. I'm like, because white trash recognized white trash, like I think they're just moments that I'm saying for the first time. in that comedy. And now it's like part of something that we kind of have in our family. So yeah, man, I mean, I have to work harder to make my wife laugh for sure. But like even the comedy special, my 13-year-old, he was 13 at the time, opened for me at the special. And he crushed in front of like 500 people or whatever it was. Like just crushed it and was like just cold-blooded. And so that was really cool. My older son, he would sit and watch it anytime we're editing it, sat through the show, loved it, would want to go see my show. So like it really brought our family together. And after being in financial business for such a long time, it was a nice 5-month hiatus. Now my comedy is a lot around money because, bro, I'm not the funniest comedian out there, but I'm the damn funniest money comedian out there because there really isn't any. So I was like, I'll just go to that category of one, you know?
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, it's funny. Like, did you feel like this was I mean, obviously, I mean, for me, even I'll say like, when I was 22 years old, I was like, I seriously was like, I'm going to go in and start doing improv. And so I started looking at, there's a improv troupe, Groundlings in LA. And I was like, I should go do that. I'm like, no, I want to make money. And I'm like, dude, stand-up comedians are poor. And I mean, like it's changing now because of like, you know, the creator world and Patreon and people like Andrew Schultz who are taking over and, you know, promoting themselves. Like social media is changing the game for this. But like when we were, you know, I'm 45, I think we're similar in age.
I'm 40.
Right. So like when we were growing up, I was like, yeah, unless you're Eddie Murphy, like you're poor, or Chris Rock, you're poor. You know, like most stand-up comedians struggled hard, right? And they would just go around touring, and I was like, that looks like a miserable life. Like I want to make money, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I have entrepreneurism in my blood, so I'm like, I'm just gonna go do that. Like, was it
25 grand to go do comedy for financial firms?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's different, right? That's crazy.
And I'm not on the road all the time like comedians, right? Like I decided like, hey, when I was rehearsing, it was Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. at my house till 6 p.m. Some people were in person, some people were on Zoom. And I rehearsed 5 days a week. Because then at 6 p.m. I'm with my family. I'm not at some comedy club trying to get 3 minutes on a stage. Now I did some comedy clubs because, you know, I was connected here in the local clubs and the you know, Wise Guys owner Keith was super supportive, so he put me up on stage and have me open for other comedians, which was helpful. But man, like I agree, like I didn't want to be on the road 24/7 in dingy clubs by myself, or you know, like I did one of those tours and was like, okay. So my second tour, I brought in one of my buddies who's super funny comedian and just filmed his first special, and we did the tour together. So we just both headlined, and it was like a lot more fun. And we did fewer cities, and you know, and sometimes when I do like a corporate gig, which is awesome because I just walk out. Like I did one at the Chelsea Theater in the Cosmo in Vegas, beautiful theater, and I walked out and I roasted this dude that's a billionaire in front of his whole audience. That's my favorite thing, is roasting people, dude. That is where I'm best at comedy, is to roast someone. That's what I love to do. I kind of roasted Justin Donald just a touch. They wanted me just to do a little bit. And so I just did one joke alone, and they were all filming. They knew it was coming when he was interviewing me just a few weeks ago.
What was your Justin Donald joke? I'm actually going to talk to him today, so I want to hear it.
I just said, hey, look, Justin, man, it's you know, now that I've been getting my comedy special out there and working on this unscripted reality series, like I got a little bit connected in Hollywood, and I'm here to tell you, like, we've been working on a project. They want to do something with Lifestyle Investor. Like they think that is a great documentary and movie. The problem is the person that was going to play you just died this year. Pee Wee Herman.
He does have a little Pee Wee in him. Paul Rubens Donald. I love it. Oh, I'm gonna see him.
Donald.
That's so amazing. Paul Rubens is totally Justin Donald.
Now you can't see it, right? Like you see it, you're like, dude, that is it. That is like word of the day worthy.
red bow tie word of the day. I love it, man. So did you tell us a little bit, but let's make a right turn and go into entrepreneurism. So I know I want you to give a little bit of your background, because you have a pretty interesting background and how you got into entrepreneurism and getting into money. And then I want to come back to comedy, because I think that's where you're at right now.
Yeah, money plagued my family. I mean, money was really difficult for my ancestors. Like on the Gunderson side, half of them were from Norway, the other half were from Ireland, and there's a whole I mean, Ireland is known for like struggle, right, and starving. And my great grandfather on the Aquino side, my mom's side, he was in southern Italy, and I wouldn't visit that place that he was from. And I'm like, dude, there's nothing there. There wasn't even a restaurant, so he had to leave that place in order to provide for his family. But the problem is, like, they just bought into this scarcity. Like, it was all about scrimping and sacrificing and delaying and like holding on to everything you've got. And it was like always stressful for them. And you could feel that, you know, like my great aunt applied for welfare and they found she had $550,000 in her savings account because she never, ever spent any money. She lived poor, even though she had at that time, that was a decent amount of cash. Right. So I came from kind of a family that was very blue collar. My dad was a coal miner, my grandfather's, my great grandfather. And, you know, so mines go on strike and, you know, like, dude, coal mines, I've never even been in one. My dad wouldn't even let me go. He's like, nah, man, like, you just move on. Don't even, you know, put that out of sight, out of mind. It's not a good life. So I respect that, like, my family was really there for me to help me build this business when I was 15. I was playing sports, but I want to make money. So I helped my dad clean the coal mining vehicles for the surface, you know, vehicles when the bosses would come in. My mom worked at a credit union, and I would clean the repossessed vehicles so they could sell them for a little bit more. And so I started this car detailing business, and that's where I learned about balance sheets and income statements, and that's where I just learned about basic financials and, you know, customer service. And I had this kind of part-time business that I even had employees when I blew out my knee in basketball. So I was making money even when I was sitting on the couch and trying to get healed. And so I wanted to like be successful. And in my mind as a teenager, that meant being a millionaire. And I won $5,000 for being the Young Entrepreneur of the Year. And I wanted to take and invest that money so I could kind of like get to what I thought was a big city of Salt Lake City, because I grew up in East Carb until third grade. There was 5,000 people there at its peak when 2 cops. Now there's 1,000 people and 5 cops. So it's definitely going in the wrong direction, you know. And then the town Price I lived in from there probably has like 12,000 people, very much around the coal mining world. And so I wanted to invest this money, didn't really know how to do it. And that led to getting internships when I was a teenager. Like I was 18, 19 when I started in a financial services business. And so I've been doing it for basically a quarter of a century now. And definitely just always kind of understood the concept of money, where a lot of people struggle with that. And I also made some mistakes early on by putting my clients in, you know, highly speculative, risky mutual funds and investments that in the year 2000, when the market went down, I had to tell them I didn't know what I was doing. And that's when my real research began. I started looking to, you know, what I write about and what would Rockefellers do, which is family offices and saving people on tax and becoming more efficient with their money so they can keep more of what they make and having them invest back in themselves. And, you know, it was getting financial organization. So I went down a road of not doing assets under management and selling funds. I went down a road of being a consultant that got paid and helped organize their finances and bring that family office concept of having all your financial team under one roof to kind of the upper middle class and some of the middle class, which was heavily neglected because everybody just chases the money and the wealth.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. You're going to appreciate. So the private equity business I'm starting right now is making minority stake investments in RIAs. That's my new business. So we take that offline, but I'm new to that world. I come from the financial lending world, and so this is a new world for me. But it's interesting that as you get into that, and you kind of touched on it earlier, there's this big idea, a big promotion, and I guess ethos around fiduciary, right? Having that fiduciary responsibility, protecting people's money. And so for you, it sounds like you moved into this world of really like helping people think of it from a more strategic perspective, not just being your run-of-the-mill financial advisor, putting someone in a, you know, distributed portfolio of, now it would be ETFs, back then would have been mutual funds. Did you, you've obviously done really well in that world and become a thought leader in that world. Like I said, I met you when you were promoting your book, working with Rich Christensen around the Rockefellers, what would the Rockefellers do? You've written a lot of books though. Was it for you the perspective of like, hey, like, did you always have that in you, the thought leadership, or was that like more of a means to an end as far as like lead gen? How did you think of the book writing? What was that for you?
I was scared to write initially. Like I wanted to write my first book because I thought it would make me be cool. Like back in, you know, I was in my early 20s, like, man, if I wrote a book, that would mean I'm people would listen to me more, or they would think I'm awesome. And so it was like this ego thing that I only wrote 72 pages in 2 years. And I just there wasn't enough purpose to it. And I was afraid. I was like, is this grammatically correct? And am I a good writer? I hadn't done much of it. And then I found one of our clients that had been through all of our content and said, hey, I'll ghostwrite the book for you. And so the first book, Killing Sacred Cows, is ghost written by him. I did a lot of editing and we did a lot of rewrite and I did a lot of learning. But now if we fast forward to Money Unmasked, or I have a book that is in the queue called Life After Debt. And it's using humor to teach finance 101. And I wrote every word of that book. I wrote every word in Money Unmasked. I'm sure the editors kind of had amazing editors, but I fell in love with the process of writing. When we're done with this, I'll be writing a blog. Personally, I won't use any tools like ChatGPT because it comes from my soul and comes from the lessons that I really learned, and I'm enjoying the process. Someone the other day said, hey, do you ever use ChatGPT to write jokes? I'm like, do you ever use ChatGPT to fuck your wife? I mean, why would I take the very process that I enjoy so much and delegate it to AI? You know what I'm saying? This is, so I fell in love with writing. I love to write. It's one of my favorite things to do. And when I get into a flow of writing, I've written a theatrical keynote we're not even talking about, I like to sit down and write comedy. And then, test that out. And then sometimes it's something written, sometimes it's just in the moment. But I really fell in love with that process. And so as you're talking about passion, I'm really passionate about creating content. That's what I love to do because it allows me to learn my own lessons in it. It allows me to be an inquiry to start discovering things. And it allows me to process emotions that might otherwise be dormant and betray me sometime in the future because I didn't fully learn or experience a lesson. And so my writing now versus my writing back in the day, it used to be pretty academic. I feel like it's more vulnerable, but still specific. Money Unmasked has more personality to it than Killing Sacred Cows, my New York Times bestseller, than my first book. But it does have those wealth frameworks and that teeth to it. So there's nuts and bolts instead of just philosophy, because Killing Sacred Cows was academic, but a little too philosophical in its academia. So I've learned, but I'm still proud of those first books because it's pretty amazing to write a first book and hit New York Times. And, I looked at it this year. We still sold 2,000 copies of that book and it's 15
crazy.
years old. So that's pretty awesome because I'm not talking about or promoting it, right? But I love when people actually read the book and enjoy the work. And I had someone tell me they're reading Money Unmasked in Justin's group. And it was like, man, I was crying. As I read it. I was like, yeah, man, there's more realness to it. And it's really helped me be more articulate. And it's helped me love life more.
That's cool, man. I want to check. I want to talk about the book. It's funny. I was and forgive me, I actually haven't read your work in it, so I'm going to. Except I did read What Would the Rockefellers Do, and I liked that book. I thought it was a great book, and it was good for me at the moment. I'm a big reader, so I'm gonna start picking up more of your books.
And by the way, I just rewrote What Would the Rockefellers Do. It should come out February of 2024. It's going to be an expanded version focused more on legacy, on the family legacy rings and the family constitution and the family office. And yeah, I'm really excited about the rewrite because
I refer that book to a lot of people, just so you know, because I think a lot of people have a tough time trying to figure out how to think of money in the next generation. Especially, I'm in Tiger 21 with Justin, so that's a big conversation there. So I've referred that book to a lot of people there. But I think what's interesting about and what you're talking about, I wrote a book right after I met you called The Core Value Equation, which is how do you operationalize values in a business. And when I was going through the process of deciding how to write the book, and this speaks to what you just said, I met with Tucker Max, who owned Scribe at the time, and he was referred to me by John Rowland. John Rowland's name keeps coming up in this episode.
Yeah, by the way, Tucker's editing my Life After Debt book. I haven't done the first rounds that he's requested. So
I love him, man. He's a funny fucker, and he's just anyone that's goes without saying. You read any of his books, he's a funny dude. Yeah. But I met him through John.
And tell Garrett to tell a joke because comedians love when you just put them on the spot. And when people start doing that to me, I would roast Tucker every time that happened. Because I knew he was behind it. So
that's amazing. I would pay money to watch that.
Oh God, he's so roastable. He's so roastable.
He's so quirky, and has such a strong personality that it's
Yes.
like it's there. You're like,
It's,
where
yeah.
do I begin, Tucker? And so yeah, he's a funny fucker, man. I love him. And so but he sat down with me. He said, why you want to write the book? And and he said, well, and where we landed was, I said, look, man, I use ghostwriters sometimes to do like PR stuff for me. They'll write like press releases, and every time I make them rewrite the whole thing because I hate the way that it doesn't sound like me when they're writing as me. I said, that's not how. He said, well, you got to write your own book then. And so I did a thing that they used to do at Scribe called Guided Author, where you write your own book, and it's kind of like minus the ghostwriter. They have an editor essentially. And for me, the other thing was, hey, you got to write 250 words a day. And I just sat there, dude. I was cranking out 2,000 words a day, and so for me, to your point, I feel like it's pretty cathartic. Like I like writing. I like the way I write. I like the tone in my when I write. So I hear what you're saying. When you start thinking about, I mean, so is this something for you? And so for me, the issue I ran into is I'm like, look, I know I got 10 more books in my head, but I just can't get motivated to like write the next book. So are you always sketching out outlines and then doing it? Like, what's your process on writing the next book?
So I was taught this outline process by my first book promoter and literary agent, which is a 20-minute process where you take 60 seconds, you brainstorm the title, you take 3 minutes, you brainstorm the chapters, you take 7 minutes and talk about 4 points to each chapter, and then you take another 7 minutes and reorganize the whole thing. And so I like to kind of start like, that's the really practical how I do it. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't planning on writing Life After Debt. But what happened was I wrote the comedy special. There's a lot of it around money. And there was these other topics where I was like, hey, there's this, the places you'll go that people give to graduates, right? When it's like a Dr. Seuss book giving to high school graduates. I'm like, what if we could give kids this book that they would actually laugh at, but learn from, using entertainment as a gateway to transformation? I'll have fun writing it. And I wasn't really planning on having it written last year, but then I got COVID and my wife's like, don't give us COVID, go up to the cabin. And it was asymptomatic. So I just went up to the cabin and I spent a whole week just rewriting this thing that I'd been tinkering with on just a few, like when I had like a weekend writing day and I'll just write. It was just for fun. So I haven't quite finished that book because it's going to take a bit of, with Tucker editing. He's like, hey, I need you to do this, that, and the other. And this children's book and Money Unmasked has kind of gone in front of it and writing the blog. So I always have like, right now on my computer, I have like 7 or 8 blogs that are just minimized right now. And I'll just start writing and one of them will take off. One of them will be the one that calls to me and I'll finish out. Other ones I might start and be like, this isn't calling to me. So I'll just minimize it and let it go for a minute. So this afternoon, I'll write for probably a couple hours. I usually write best first thing in the morning, but I do love just like writing. And then I'll have a process where I'm like, well, what does this mean to the reader? And what questions, if I pose to them, will help them apply this in a way that whether this was the very most important topic to them or not, helps them be better off. And so, when I'm writing, I'm talking about structures of context that we get stuck in society, how we can view it from outside of that context, where that becomes permanent in people's minds because they're indoctrinated, and then how we can see past that and through that so we live a better life. You can kind of see that formula, even though I might be talking about a various number of topics of, I write about like the time I got sued and went to court. I ended up winning, but dude, that was a stressful last time. And so like to really write about that and where I could take responsibility of being in that situation, because I had a client that was getting sued and they were just stifled. They didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I could write and then just share it generically on my site because I'm sure there's other people that are afraid of this kind of stuff. And that was a fascinating experience. And I learned another third that I didn't learn during the experience by simply writing about it. I mean, like, oh yeah. Yeah. So
so right now, like talk about Money Unmasked a little bit. What's that book about? Like give us some color there for readers. Obviously you're an expert in money. You do a lot around money. You love to talk about money, and that's your jokes are about money. The business that you sold was around money, but talk about Money Unmasked a little bit.
That book's the longest project I've ever worked on. I mean, it just took a long time because in 2008, I was really clear that I just was hoping someone else really had a good way to dissect how we each viewed money differently, what our subconscious beliefs were. I was calling it a persona, a money persona. and I would research, and everything was really rudimentary that I found, like, oh, saver, spender, giver, amasser, like, and I used some of that in some of the books, like What Would the Rockefellers Do? But I was like, man, what is it like that? Why do people damage themselves when it comes to money, and why do some people succeed? And so I found out really through research, there's a shadow persona that we have, or a winning persona. And there's different indicators, but most people don't see those indicators. So they get trapped unintentionally, where if they simply could see them, they could make different choices. And then they can understand what it's like to work with the other money personas, because this is where conflict arises, is when people view money differently. And so it took a long time just to get the basics of what those money personas were. Almost 10 years, right?
Wow.
Of research and data and connections and talking with people, some formal, some informal. And then I really started to take the time to write. And at first I only knew the shadow personas. I just call them money personas, but I'm like, all four of these are shadow. Like, there's got to be a flip side winning, right? So the book really begins with, like, our relationship to money is merely a reflection of the relationship we have to ourselves. And anywhere where we haven't resolved some of those misnomers, that pain or hurt, or childhood situations that we never truly healed from or learned from, it's going to sabotage us financially. And then we put a lot of weight on money to make us happy. And the reality is, when it comes to the basics, it does make us happier for sure on the basics. If you're not getting enough food, if you don't have shelter, like, money is going to provide that for you. You're going to have a better situation. But the data shows once we get up to a higher number, it's all over the board. Because if you don't have passion and purpose, you're going to find that happiness, no matter how much money you have, can be very, evasive. And so what I want to do is get people to really be clear about what their money personas were. And then once we have that platform, understand how they go about creating. So there's a chapter called Cycle of Creation. And it's about how do you propagate ideas up front before investing, by generating revenue from day one, by things that are consistent with who you are versus copying what someone else does. Or where can we plug financial leaks so you have more money to put back into your life? So it's not just about your retirement plans. It's about quality of life today. It's about skill sets that help you to be more productive. And it's about more cash flow. So it's really, I had people say that it should have been 3 books, and probably should have been, because we went from 80,000 words down to 40,000 words. It took a long time to write and rewrite and learn, because I wrote about it. But the final message in this is, what we're really looking for in the end is love. That's what we really want, is to express love and to feel love. And because we're so protective of ourselves and so concerned about what our worth is based upon our money, most people stifle and diminish their love. And so, like, the final chapter is like a completely different chapter than what I've really seen in other financial books. And that's why I'm willing to dedicate the next 20 years of my life to getting this book in people's hands and their hearts and their heads, where other books, I haven't quite put that kind of energy after the writing was done. But I think it's that important.
I love that, man. Last year I was on, I started reading a lot of books 2 years ago. And I have a guy, a CEO that I advised, that he was on a reading kick, and he got me into it. And I was a guy that would always refer books to people, but I'd never read them, which is like a running joke with my friends. They're like, Terry, did you actually read that book? I'm like, no, but I heard it's good. And then I started reading. And so I read 35 books last year. And now they make fun of me because I listen to books. So like, did you read it or listen? I'm like, go fuck yourself. Okay. Like, I ingested the book. Yeah. I'm like, I'm really looking forward to Elon Musk and Neuralink, so I could just download all that shit, and I don't even need to like spend the time reading it, or listening to it rather. And so this year I did 52 books. The goal was 52 books in 52 weeks. But last year I exited my company. I had like a lot of trauma around money. And so I read a bunch of books on money. And that book that you just described was the book I would have read last year, because I read Psychology of Money, Happy Money by Ken Honda, a bunch of other books. And what you just described, I'm like, oh my God. And by the way, I can't wait to read that book. Like, I love books about money, and I'm excited. Do you have it on audiobook? Because that's
I actually, to the sides of me right now are curtains that are hung, like big, hefty, because I'm for the audiobook in here. I actually hired a coach to help me with the audiobook, because in my past, my audiobooks, I speak so damn fast, and I'm really going to have, like, Dude, I got to tell you, like McConaughey just set a new bar on what an audiobook could be if you're ever listening.
Crushed.
So like, I'm inspired, and I'm like, I'm going to take time and make this a piece of art. I'm going to pause. I'm going to feel each emotion and think through the sentences before I say them. So I'm dedicating the next several weeks to that process. So it's not done yet because I don't want it to be like my Killing Sacred Cows is rushed. I look forward to redoing that audiobook down the road. I had 2 days to do it, and I just spoke really fast. And someone once said in a review, does this guy not know how to read? And I was like, shit, that's fair. That was like not my best read. You know, it's hard to read your own book on audio. It's harder than I thought.
Yeah, I would assume that. You know, so it's funny, when I did my book, I was like, I hate, by the way, at that point, I hated audiobooks because I'd lose track. And I'm like, I got to get someone that's really good. So I hired like a Juilliard trained actor to do it. And now, after I've been on doing audio stuff now for 3 years, and everyone's like, why don't you read your own book, Darius? I'm like, you just inspired me. I'm like, I think I got to do a reread. And but to your point, McConaughey, so I had one of my golden rules, and I'm glad you said what you said, because I think everyone needs to hear this. The fact that Garrett actually has that thoughtfulness will make everyone want to listen to that book 10 times more, because a lot of these people, like, I don't know if you ever, what's a Power and Force? Have you ever, that book?
Power versus Force, Hawkins.
Yeah. Oh my God, have you listened to that? That I want to shoot myself listening to that guy.
Yeah, you got to listen to his In the World of It, Not of It, where he's just giving a speech. Reading the book that's rough. You just got to read instead of listen. And by the way, there's another book, Viola Davis's book, is next level. I mean, because she's an winner, and dude, her book's heart wrenching because her childhood was insane. But like,
really,
her ability to do a book, I was like, because that's what I'm doing. I'm going, what are the standards out there of books that are just great by the author that read them? And those two are the standard in my opinion so far.
I'm going to throw one more at you, because from that, before I say it, I'm going to say I said. Look, McConaughey won an Oscar. Okay. Viola Davis, Oscar, right? If they win an Oscar, that means they're pretty good at reading scripts, right? So if they're pretty good at reading scripts, they're probably going to be pretty good at reading their book. So I came to that conclusion. If you won an Oscar, it's probably pretty good. Listen, Will by Will Smith, which is like, especially if you're 45, you grew up with like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like I'm going to spoil a little bit. First half of the book, I loved. Second half of the book, I'm just going to say that when he slapped Chris Rock in the mouth, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I was like, seriously, watch it. Like, the whole world was shocked. I'm like, that's about right. I didn't even like question it, like, even one bit. But he won an Oscar, right? So, actually, he won an Oscar that night great. That's a really I'm
an acting coach that's worked with a lot of these guys. I hired Larry Moss to work with me on the book, and he's talking about in this paragraph, when you wrote this, where were you at? Like, what you're talking about, what were you feeling? And like, why are you not enunciating? I want to hear the enunciation. Why didn't you pause here? So he's been phenomenal in walking through it with me. And so here's what I'm going to try, Darius. I'm going to read a paragraph a couple times, put myself in the place, put the book down, and then just say the paragraph.
Oh,
so it's how I would talk, not how I write. And so it'll be mostly the same book, but a little bit unique, hopefully.
Hey, 40,000 words that way, that's a lot, that's a lot.
Dude, I mean,
but
the thing is, if you get like in greatness, like, it's not just a task. When I look at my mistakes of the past, I wanted to get a lot done. So let's check that off. Let's get that done. And art doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's what can I dedicate my life to? How could I immerse myself in this comedy special and give everything I possibly have, every ounce to it? And I think that, like, when we see someone that does something so excellent, like, I mean, whether you're into basketball or not, dude, what LeBron is doing this year is so next level. 21 years in the NBA, and he just won MVP of the in-season tournament, and is like, the bottom line is, that's because that dude is taking care of his body. He's minding what he eats. He's getting the work done. He's working out when it's the off season. Like Tom Brady, like, what we don't see is what it takes to have something like that happen doesn't come from being busy. It becomes from being so deliberate. And I find myself at times allowing that busyness to come into my life when I can create the space. So I have enough time to write. So I have enough time to record or connect with someone or have the time to like rehearse, those are the things that matter. And like, dude, I wrote this theatrical keynote. In this theatrical keynote, I act out 4 characters. I play the guitar twice and take people through exercises. I do spoken word because everybody wants a 45-year-old white man to do spoken word, obviously.
No, clearly.
Clearly. But like the amount of rehearsal I've done on that is more than all my other speeches combined. So I've been speaking since I was 15 years old. I gave my first speech. I didn't give a lot of speeches until really 2008 is when it was like really common because my book came out. But even I have tape of me back in 2004 giving speeches. I spent more time on it because I was willing to dedicate to the craft because it spoke to my soul, because I was like, I want to do something. I had a dream one night. In that dream, there was a slender figure all dressed in black in like a Broadway set, just doing a one-man show, and I was directing, but then all of a sudden I was the guy on the stage. Then all of a sudden I was the person in the crowd, and I woke up and I turned to my wife. I'm like, I'm going to do a one-man show. I'm going to do because actually the first time I ever spoke at the GOT Gathering of the Titans, Bo Eason was there speaking.
Oh, wow.
Like, and I'm on the bus with him. I'm like, what do you do? He goes, I do a one-man show. And in my head, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, it was so, the ignorance was huge. And then he got up and did it, and it was amazing. And so after that dream, I called Bo, because that's my first step. If I'm inspired, like deeply inspired, I go, who do I know that could be a co-creator? Who can I call right now to move into action? I called Bo. He's like, here's my acting coach. Here's my movement coach. Awesome. Then I called Michael Port and I said, would you direct my one-man show? And he said, yes. And he brought in a screenwriter. And so it was like, it's co-creation first, it's collaboration second. Well, really, it's delegation to offload things off of your plate, right? So that you have the space. And here's the thing that really sabotages most people. People are addicted to escapism. When we do something out of the ordinary, escapisms come in and say, you're tired. You need more sleep. You know what? You got to get caught up on that TV series. You know what? The garage isn't organized. You know what? You got to go do, like, it's just the most insane thoughts where we convince ourselves we're busy so we don't have to face our insecurities, or we don't have to take a leap of faith into the unknown territory but for me, when the stakes are high in that unknown territory, like when I walked off the stage after my first one-man show, or not my first time doing a comedy set, dude, there's no drugs that have ever made me feel that good. There's no, like, it was just so amazing. And the energy at dinner that night, bringing a bunch of friends. And then the first time I did my one-man show, this dude came up and hugged me and started crying and told me about like something he'd never told another human, because it's so vulnerable. By doing, the one-man show, I'm sharing my worst moments of my life and what it takes to overcome those. So like, fuck, man, that's what excites me. Like, I want to be an artist that makes money, not an entrepreneur that destroys art, And so like, I'm trying to find that balance of being an entrepreneur that's an artist instead of the entrepreneur that has an excuse not to create the art because it's not profitable enough.
Yeah, man, you're so inspiring me right now. Oh man, I wish this show could go longer. I got to join Justin for his thing in 5 minutes. So I want to do the greatness question, and then I want to show people where they can hook up and get all your stuff. So greatness question, Garrett, is what is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Really that formula: co-creation, elimination, delegation, and collaboration, right? That's the key. The thing that really helped me most is I married well. I married the person that supports my dreams and is really willing to let me go out on a limb and try the things, because she's the one that said, let's go to Italy for a summer. I wouldn't have spoke that into existence, but she did. So she helped me break those chains of scarcity. I
love that, man. Gosh dang it. Man, if you come to Austin or I go to Utah, we got to hang out. Actually, I know you come to Austin because you come to Justin stuff. So I
absolutely. I'm going to be there in February. I'm speaking. I'm doing the one-man show. Maybe you can come check it out.
Dude, if I'm in town, I'm there. So I will connect with your team offline. Let's get everyone lined up with where do they get the Money Unmasked? Where do they get the books? Where do they come see you? You name it, and let's connect people right now.
GarrettGunderson.com. You can buy my books there. I Am Money doesn't come out until January, so I think you get that at Barnes & Noble on the pre-order right now. And yeah, there's a Money Unmasked website as well, but just go to GarrettGunderson.com, check out my blog. I think it's called My Musings. Check out the persona quiz. You have to scroll down to find it, but take that quiz, find out about your money persona. And yeah, thanks for having me, man. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun.
Garrett, man, you are seriously an inspiration. I love the artistry and just like the attention and being everything that you are. It's like makes me just light up, man. So much gratitude from here at the Greatness Machine. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, man.
All right, everybody. Peace out. Go check out Garrett's stuff, all his goodness that he's bringing into the world. And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. Until next time, peace out. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.